episode of The Grindbin. I'm Mike Wood.
I'm Chris Mann.
Today we're going to be talking about 1973's The Roommates.
Grind it up! Hey, Bobby, I got the money.
Yeah, I made the team. But you're a hooker.
Get that goddamn thing out of your mouth.
Spooky ain't got no real coach.
Hello, pizza man.
We're gonna play a little game, baby.
I just love fun and games. Get a little girl a little hot and horny.
You could have been decent once in a while. And maybe Daddy would have had to kill himself because he couldn't get it up anymore.
What a shame.
Come on, just step on the gas before we get creepy.
If you've never listened to this podcast before, Chris and I discuss exploitation movies from the 1960s through the 1990s. Today we have quite a special movie. I have never heard of this movie before a couple days ago, and I am so sad I haven't.
Sometimes we'll mention how a movie feels like it was dropped off from another dimension. This is one of those films.
For sure.
Yeah.
A portal opened and like a film reel was just dropped into the earth somehow from somewhere far away.
It's a mirror universe.
This is honestly like if an alien race made a movie that they thought like, or a computer. Like
Yeah.
if they just put together all sorts of random snippets of movies from the 70s and were like, this is what people like, right? And just combined it into one sort of bizarre mashup of... I really don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it's like vignettes after what the fuck was that, and then another vignettes.
And we're going to talk about, there's a movie that was made probably, I think, a decade after this movie that really, really ripped this movie off. And I'm pretty sure that they knew what they were doing.
They took a big bite and swallowed all the seeds.
This movie was recommended to me by our good friend... David from Australia, who has infamously recommended Lunch Wagon, a movie Chris and I really love. And you can listen to our Lunch Wagon episode to find out more about that one. But David, you have totally redeemed yourself with this pick. You sent it to me. I just briefly took a look at the first 30 seconds, and I immediately fast-tracked this into an episode.
Top of the bin.
Because I have never in my life seen anything like this.
No.
This is a one-of-a-kind movie, and I recommend everybody go watch it before you listen to this episode.
In fact, I know you mentioned to me the Alamo Drafthouse screens this movie.
If you look up The Roommates on IMDb, you'll notice very, very, very small amounts of people have seen this movie. And when we're talking less than 100 user reviews of this movie, this movie apparently was screened every so often at the Alamo Drafthouse on their Weird Wednesdays, and it gained a small cult following that eventually... fought hard enough to get this movie released on Blu-ray. I would highly recommend everybody purchasing the Blu-ray, but if you do want to watch this movie, it is available on YouTube, and you can go watch it. Wouldn't recommend it, but I'm going to buy myself a Blu-ray copy, that's for sure.
Especially if they do have those cool features in the movie itself. I would love that.
Yeah, I got to see what's on it, because this has actually become probably one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. Like, this is one of my favorite movies we've covered on this podcast, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So, one piece of grind business before we get into the episode is from our good friend Sean. This is for the Chesty Anderson episode, Chesty Anderson, U.S. Navy, which was episode 2 episodes ago. I forgot to mention this in our last episode, but Sean says, now we talked about in the episode, they use the acronym the Waves.
Waves, yeah.
Well, the Waves is a real acronym in the United States Naval Service. Here's from Sean. The United States Naval Reserve, Women's Reserve, better known under the acronym WAVES, for Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. So it is a real acronym. I was stupidly saying that they made it up like it was some sort of class name or something.
Yeah, because, we're such experts in the military applications in these films.
That's why we have you great listeners to tell us when we're wrong. So thank you very much.
Which is constantly.
Don't be shy. Reach out. If you see something, hear something on this show that you take offense to or is wrong, go ahead and email us, grindbin@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at grindpod, or go join the Facebook and message us there and just say, hey, dumb shits, you got this wrong, or hey, I hate your show.
# easily offended.
So before we get into the movie, there is no trailer for this movie. The only things I found online for trailers is it just plays the first 2 minutes of the movie. And I'm like, well, it seems like a trailer. That's not the trailer.
Yeah.
So, but I'll read the taglines to you because I like this from the poster. They shared more than their rooms.
Yeah, and that's all you get.
And there was another one, though, which will die in the summer of 73. And I was like, what? It's very conflicting.
Yeah, it is. It is, because one has it to be like some melodrama. The other one makes it like it's some, slasher Logan's Run situation.
I can't wait to get into the discussion of the movie because never have I seen a movie where the tonal shifts are so dramatic. So let's get into the cast and crew here.
Yep.
Arthur Marks, writer and director. You're going to like this, Chris. It's been a long time. I don't have his credits written down.
Oh, shit.
Instead, I have a biography by one Woody Anders.
We're playing Woody's theme song underneath it right now. I'm going to make one. Don't worry, Woody. He's earned it.
If you don't know who Woody Anders is, he is responsible for a lot of bios we've read on this show. He is a contributor over at IMDb. We don't know Woody. We've never contacted him.
And we won't.
We won't. We hope that one day he listens to this show and goes, oh my God.
What the hell are they doing?
They read my bios. And he'll either be delighted that we've read them or pissed off. But we do give him credit. So everything I'm about to say is written by Woody. And we love his the way he eloquently writes about these exploitation kings of the exploitation genre.
He gives it the champagne treatment.
He really does.
To an RC Cola formula.
Writer, director, producer Arthur Marks was born on August 2nd, 1927 in Los Angeles, California. His grandparents acted in silent pictures, and his father, Dave Marks, was an assistant director and production manager at MGM, whose credits include The Wizard of Oz and Easter Parade, 1948. Arthur began his film career as a young boy, working as both an extra and a bit actor in movies in the 1930s. He attended the University of Southern California and got a job working in the production department of MGM. However, it was the 1950s that his career really took off. He was an assistant director for the TV shows Broken Arrow, 1956, The 20th Century Fox Hour, 1955, and Treasury Men in Action, 1950, and worked on the immensely popular Perry Mason, 1957 TV series as both a producer and director. He eventually began directing enjoyably trashy, low-budget drive-in exploitation features in the 1970s. He made his theatrical film debut with the 1970 movie Togetherness. He truly hit his stride, though, with several hugely entertaining blaxploitation outings. The rousing crime thriller Detroit 9000. This particular picture was re-released in theaters in 1998 by Quentin Tarantino. The delightfully breezy Pam Grier vehicle Friday Foster, 1975. The bang-up Fred Williamson action flick Bucktown, 1975. The atmospheric horror winner JD's Revenge, 1976, and the amusingly goofy comedy The Monkey Hustle, 1976, which stars Rudy Ray Moore from Dolomite.
Yeah.
His other films as director include the gritty film noir Bonnie's Kids, 1973, the sleazy serial killer opus The Roommates, 1973, and the silly softcore romp Class of 74, 1972. In addition, he served as production manager on The Centerfold Girls, 1974, and Wonder Women, 1973. He often produced the films he directed. Marks ran the independent film outfit, the General Film Corporation, in the 1970s, which picked up pictures like William Girdle's The Get Man, 1974, and the notorious cult exploitation gem The Candy Snatchers, 1973, for theatrical distribution. Outside of his work, he has directed episodes of TV shows such as The Dukes of Hazzard, 1979, Starsky and Hutch, 1975, and I Spy, 1965. He and his wife, Phyllis Marie Lehman, have 4 children. His sons, Bo Marks and Paul Marks, are both successful film and television producers. And I gotta say, after watching this movie, I have a real interest in watching some of his other movies.
Oh, without a doubt. I want to see his entire filmography.
Yeah, I can't wait, because this movie, I can't tell you how much I just love this movie. It's so... I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah.
John Duran, the writer, mostly known as an actor. He's the other writer in this movie. Mostly known as an actor. He only has 2 writing credits, actually. This and 1974's Devil Times 5. He has 54 acting credits, however, lots of TV shows with guest spots. His first movie I have written down was The Roommates. He plays Socks. Do you remember Socks?
No.
Neither do I. It's hard to tell anybody's name other than the main girls in this movie, though.
Yeah.
1974, Devil Times 5, which he also wrote. 1975, Lepke. 1975, Jesse's Girls. Now, you may remember that one because that stars Sandra Curry from Policewoman, who played Lacey Bond. 1976, he was in The Gumball Rally. He played Ace Preston / Mr. Guts, who was on the Camaro team. 1978, the movie Wheels. And 1978, Who'll Stop the Rain, which was starring Nick Nolte. He was in lots more TV. He last acted in 1998. He passed away in 2003 at the age of 65. So we get into the cast now. Marky Bay, Carla. 12 acting credits. Started her career in 1970's The Landlord. 1972, she was in The Class of 74, which was also directed by the same director of this movie, and also starred Sandra Curry from Policewoman from our last episode. 1973, The Roommates. 1974, Sugar Hill. 1974, Hang Up. And then she did TV guest roles after that and quit acting in 1979. She currently runs a murder mystery cruise out of L.A. with her actor husband, Don Fenwick. And Chris and I are definitely going to book ourselves some tickets on that boat. She also builds dollhouse interiors that are featured in LA museums. Pat Woodell, who plays Heather. 17 acting credits. Started in TV and was a regular cast member on 1963's Petticoat Junction as Bobby Joe Bradley. At some point in the show, though, her character was replaced by another actress, Laurie Saunders. I don't have an explanation why, though. She went on to exploitation films in the 1970s. She started in 1971, The Big Dollhouse, which was directed by Jack Hill and stars Pam Grier, which we probably, not even probably, definitely will cover at some point in this show. I love that movie. Also, the sequel, Big Birdcage, is awesome. 1972, The Woman Hunt. 1972, The Twilight People. 1972, she was also in Class of 74. 1973, The Roommates was her last movie.
Really? That's it?
Yeah. The last thing she did was in 1973, an episode of Perry Mason, which might be one that this director also directed or produced. She ended up passing away in 2015 at the age of 71.
Oh, no.
Roberta Collins, who plays Beth, prolific exploitation film star, 36 credits, started in TV, then went on to also be in The Big Dollhouse, 1971. Jack Hill and Pam Grier, also with Pat Woodell. 1971, Women in Cages. 1972, Sweet Kill. Now, this is an interesting one. Directed by Curtis Hanson, who directed L.A. Confidential and 8 Mile and many more movies. And he just passed away, I think, 2 days ago.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, what a coincidence, though, that we ran into him on this show right after he died. I guess he had issues with Alzheimer's or dementia or something. He was up there, but I had no idea that Curtis Hanson was directing exploitation movies in the 70s.
Yeah, that's insane.
The movie did star Tad Hunter and Sherry Latimer. 1972, she was in The Unholy Rollers, which we are going to cover at some point in this show. I really like that movie. Just a matter of fitting it in somewhere. 1973, The Roommates. 1973, she was also in Wonder Women. 1974, now you're going to like this one, Chris. Those Mad Movie Makers. Now, this has been named once before on this show because it stars one of our favorite actresses from a real long ago episode. Episode 3, I believe. The Cheerleaders.
Really?
Jovita Bush.
Oh, boy.
Is in Mad Movie Makers.
Jovita!
1974, she was in Caged Heat. Now, this is a very famous exploitation movie because it was directed by Jonathan Demme, who directed Silence of the Lambs. It was a Roger Corman picture. 1974, Three the Hard Way, which also has Jeannie Bell, who was in the last movie we covered, Policewomen. She played Pam. It's a blaxploitation classic with Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, and Jim Kelly, all three in a movie. 1975, she was in Death Race 2000, which is another Roger Corman classic, which is Sylvester Stallone's first movie. I believe his first movie.
Really?
You've never seen Death Race 2000?
No.
Oh, we might have to cover that one.
That one I want to see.
You've never seen Death Race
I've
2000?
not.
Oh,
No.
David Carradine and Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone, it's like this crazy, it's like Wacky Racers, but live action, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain.
It's my first one, right?
She made an appearance in 1982's Death Wish 2, but was only credited as, quote, woman at party. 1976, The Witch Who Came from the Sea. 1984, Hard Bodies. 1986, Hard Bodies 2. Her last credit, 1986, Vendetta. She quit acting after that, and unfortunately, she passed away in 2008. She was only 63. It was an accidental overdose. Laurie Rose, who plays Bria. Now, Chris, did you notice her at all as being familiar?
She had a very familiar face.
Okay. She started her career in 1972's The Women Hunt, 1972 The Abductors, 1972 The Hot Box, which is a woman in prison movie written by Jonathan Demme, who directed Caged Heat. I didn't know he was that involved in the women in prison genre, but
Yeah, no kidding.
interesting. 1972, I like the name of this one, the adult version of Jekyll and Hyde. That's the name of it. 1973, The Roommates. And then immediately after that, 1974, Police Women. She played Jeanette, the other girl who broke out of jail with Pam. Because I watched this, I'm like, that girl looks really familiar. And I look it up, I'm like, oh yeah, the girl I couldn't remember her name in Police Women. 1974, The Working Girls. 1976, Blood Village. Went on to TV and some other small roles. As of 2011, she was working as a belly dancer in LA.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay, last person we're going to talk about. We're done with the cast because I figured the girls are the main focus of this movie.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this. This guy's only in this movie for a little bit. John Hart, who plays the sheriff, Sam. So the other sheriff, you know, the white guy that runs around and he like yells at Heather at one point. Where'd he go?
Yeah.
Where'd he go? He has 166 acting credits, and he is best known as the Lone Ranger in the original series from 1950 to 1953. Now, he's not the only Lone Ranger. He was on 52 episodes to replace Clayton Moore during a contract dispute. But he was, quote, the other Lone Ranger. And the LA Times wrote an article about him when he passed away in 2009, honoring him as the forgotten or other Lone Ranger. But he reprised his role as the Lone Ranger in a lot of other things, including a Happy Days episode and many other occurrences where he would play the Lone Ranger.
Not so lone, huh? Kind of weird.
He was in a lot of movies. What he's doing in this movie, I have no clue. He's barely in it.
Yeah, it's like blink and you miss it. It's like the worst cameo ever.
They should have had him wear like the Lone Ranger mask.
The mask. Or they had to have a gag where he puts on his binoculars and it's all blackened. And it kind of tries to get out, but smears and it forms the mask more like a big little wink, like, Boss, you look like some kind of ranger.
Last thing I'm going to mention, there's a Grindbin all-star in this movie. Ushita Guard.
Yep.
Oh, you noticed her.
Yep.
You would know Ushita Guard from she was in Super Vixens as the German Fraulein.
Yeah.
And what was the other movie? Oh, Chessie Anderson,
Jesse
U.S.
Anderson.
Navy.
Yeah.
Where she played the boss's girlfriend.
Yeah.
She is just in this movie credited as, quote, orgy girl.
Yep.
And that's it. She's in it for 1 minute. Blink and you miss her. But Ushi, we keep running into you, and I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to see you. Well, even though this movie doesn't have a trailer, it starts like a trailer. This music you're hearing below us is what plays, and this movie starts off the most insane way I've ever seen a movie start.
Yeah.
It begins with fourth wall breakage as the first thing you see. There's a woman, it just opens on like this zoom of a woman staring directly at the audience, and then we cut to other women staring at you. We like zoom into a woman walking towards us with her bikini, and then the next shot is like another girl staring at you, licking her lips.
You know what this to me, it reminds me of like a loading screen for Grand Theft Auto 5.
It does, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just weird. I've never seen a movie that puts you so like out of place in the first 5 seconds.
And it's brilliant because I had nothing to go on for this film. I had no trailer. I had no idea what I was getting into. And this makes you think it's going to be some weird beach sex romp.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's just a beach movie.
Yeah.
No, because after the first... And please, do yourself a favor. If you're not going to watch this movie, just at least look it up on YouTube and watch the first 30 seconds. It is incredible. But no, it's not a beach party movie, Chris, because the first thing we have is Carla and Beth sitting on the beach. And Carla's reading Beth this article out of a magazine. And basically, she says that women should unite and tell men that they are not just objects of pleasure and that sex is not a man's God-given right and they should learn to be free. And Beth responds,
Girls unite. Join the sexual revolution and be free.
Yeah, free and lonely.
Free and lonely is right.
Carla agrees and says that all women libbers are crazy and they are like from the Victorian age. I'm like, okay, where are we going with this? Beth gets up from her towel and says, I don't want to be equal. Who wants to compete with men? I have a hard enough time competing with women.
Huh. This feels like a weird Gloria Steinem kind of live performance interpretation. This whole thing feels like a weird vignette after vignette.
Because I'm like, is this supposed to be ironic?
Yeah.
Or is it like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It's very confusing. But then Carla tells Beth, she basically looks at her and she's like, well, you can go for anything you want. You're a young girl. You got the world in front of you. You have all the tools to be great. And why would you want to be a housewife? You could die by the age of 40 from Ajax poisoning.
That's what killed me. I'm like, Ajax poisoning.
And Beth looks at her and says, yeah, but think of all the loving until then. And then they both like kind of laugh it off and they agree that every woman needs a good man. And I just wrote, huh. I'm just at a loss of words as to what to think of the first 2 minutes of this movie.
Yeah, because I couldn't tell, like, okay, is there any kind of plot here? Are we establishing anything with the characters? I have nobody's name. I know nothing about the background of any of these characters. It's just rapid fire succession after succession of this. It's like a weird inverted vagina monologues.
You know, it kind of is actually like the vagina monologues. So the theme music plays again, and then we go to a school, and half of, like, more credits play. So every now and then we'll get more credits in between these vignettes. And then we cut to 2 new girls, Bria and Heather, and they're running around the track. And did you notice this? I said, I must add this in, that they're running a mile or something in literally the worst clothes possible. Heather is wearing tight jeans and a crop top jeans while running a mile on a track, right?
That I loved it.
And Bria is wearing like tiny little jean shorts and like a top that's just tied on in the middle. And I'm just like, no. You can't go run a mile in that.
It's like when the coach punishes you and like they send you out and like, all right, you're running like 3 laps in like your jeans, a jackets, layers of denim in like 95-degree heat for like Hell Week.
Punished for something.
Yeah.
So they have a philosophical conversation where Bria kind of keeps up the women's lib talk and says that they shouldn't be feeding themselves with all these vitamins and junk because they're not really people or something. And Heather basically tells her that they should use their gift as women to get mankind to serve them. And again, I just write, huh.
Yeah. Because there's so much, they're laying so much foundation and groundwork for some kind of commentary here. And it just, we're learning it's just going to get thrown out the window later. I don't know why they're padding this in.
I know. This is so weird. It's like, that's when I watch this movie. I'm like, this has to be all ironic, right?
Yeah.
Like all this whole movie is just like a big send up. It seems to me very self-aware. But when you're watching it, I'm not sure. Because some of the dialogue is just borderline insanity. Like, I don't know if it's intentional or not. And I'm really interested to watch this guy's other movies because some of this stuff, I just can't wait to get into it. So we go from that to more credits. We play the theme song again.
Yeah, it's so
play
weird.
More credits.
Because you think the movie's going to start, But again, it's like breaks, and then now we're back watching credits, and you have to like readjust yourself. Like, okay, is this really pertinent?
Okay, so when I started this movie, because we go, okay, the next thing is we see Beth and Carla and they park their bikes, and we're going to have another slightly philosophical conversation. And I just wrote at this point, I'm like, this is like a beach party movie version of the movie Slacker by Richard Linklater.
Oh, yeah.
Or like Waking Life.
Yeah.
Like we're getting bizarre, like women's liberation discussion that's not really women's liberation discussion because they're like laughing it off. It's so bizarre. Like, and at this point, you're right. It's like, what are they going for?
Man, don't ask me.
So Beth and Carla have a conversation, and Beth says she met some guy who was married, and him and his wife proposed a threesome over hot dogs. If you notice that. She says, like, yeah, we were eating hot dogs, and then they said they wanted a threesome.
You want to come over and play Spin the Wiener?
Mr. Nice Guy's wife, huh?
Yeah. And after they sprung for a 35-cent hot dog and a 15-cent Coke, they invited me to have group sex.
Oh, come on. All the loving couples bit.
And Carla says, well, orgies have come a long way. And then they like start talking about how they should make a group therapy session for orgies. Where people can ask them questions about orgies and all the questions about them. And I just wrote, like, this movie, where am I going?
Well, orgies certainly have come a long way. Hey, how about a group sex clinic for people with hang-ups? I mean, we could answer all the forbidden questions like, do I have to be oversexed to participate?
Is it expensive? Can anyone join?
What kind of people will I meet?
Will it interfere with my religious beliefs?
Is it likely to wear me out or shorten my sex life? Or are you sure you can keep a secret?
It's okay. It's like when you go on that gravitron thing that spins around and you get out. That's how I feel.
Cut to credits. Continue going. Theme song plays. We go to the locker room now. Bria and Heather are showering, and Bria talks about how nature shouldn't be messed with. And then Heather starts talking about how she enjoys martinis and sunsets. Then they talk about how experiences are less about who you're with and more about enjoying the experience. And I wrote, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the hell movie I'm watching. What is this?
So at first I was like, okay, because we were watching it on a certain format, and I was like, is it accidentally switching between another movie right now? Is it...
The thing is, though, like we're describing it, we're saying, like, this is crazy. It's not bad.
No. Oh, no,
it's
no.
very interesting. And I would have to say that, like you're saying, it is weird.
Yeah.
But you do get such a great idea of who these characters are before the movie actually starts.
Yeah.
So it's actually defining each of them as people. And, you know, us summing it up is not going to really do justice. You really got to watch this movie.
I think, it's a really good kind of... I don't want to... It's kind of weird to use the word voyeuristic, but you really are getting a...
It is kind of voyeuristic, I guess. Like I said, it's like a lot like Richard Linklater's Slacker.
Yeah.
Wrapped in an exploitation film, which is the most bizarre premise. So we go to a classroom. We've stopped the vignettes for now. The credits are done. Bria walks into this classroom, and her three friends are sitting in there. Heather, Carla, and Beth. Bria says she got a job as a camp counselor, and apparently they're all going to go to Lake Arrowhead. Or Heather says something about how her and Carla are going to have a threesome with some guy Carla picked up called Nick. And Carla describes him as, get this, a cross between, quote, Truman Capote and Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
And I wrote, that's a real head scratcher of a combo there. Also, when we actually meet Nick, would you say that's an accurate description of him?
No.
I would say not at all.
No.
Maybe Steve McQueen, but how is he Truman Capote? The guy says maybe 5 lines of dialogue. So it's a problem.
Well, his presence speaks volumes in this movie, apparently.
So then they start having some philosophical conversation about sex. And I just wrote, what the hell is this? We're still going on with it. Anyways, it ends, and they're at a dance club. We cut to, like, Carla just dancing. And if there's one thing we know about Carla, it's she can sure cut a rug.
Fuck, man.
She does that great, like, 70s dance where she's, like... She's snapping her fingers in the air and just swaying around.
Yeah, kind of the gyrating thing. I'm like, dude, this is like A portrait of the times.
And I like this part is, so some guy comes over and he hits on Heather because she's sitting at this table by herself. And I wrote, this is real bad. He walks over and he says, my friend Warren and I have a bet. And we cut over to this guy, Warren, and he looks like maybe, I don't think this man should be drinking alcohol. I'm not sure he should be out without a chaperone, if you know what I mean.
No.
He seems special. He really does. He's a real funky looking dude. So he goes to Heather and he says, well, we have a bet going. You must be a celebrity because a girl with a body like yours has to be some sort of athlete.
Yeah.
And I just wrote, wow.
Yeah. And the terrible thing is that it works.
Yeah. I wrote, it does work. And they go dance.
Which gives you an idea of this woman's character.
Okay. What's interesting, because Heather is like this in this part of the movie.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the movie, she's not like this at all.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because of a party atmosphere, perhaps. It has to be.
Okay. I had such a hard time because we're going to get into this. Is like Heather switches just 180 degrees from who she is in the beginning of this movie to the middle to the end. She is the enigma of this movie. Is like, you cannot figure her out.
No.
So then Beth comes up to the bar and she asks some guy if he's seen Brea, and he says, and this is when this movie really starts to get insane. This guy looks at her and he says,
Don't know yet. Hey, listen, have you seen Brea?
Brea. I'd like to see Brea. Lying naked on an oriental rug, with her arms reaching out for my passionate, throbbing body.
Andy.
No, I haven't seen her.
and I wrote, Jesus Christ. Like, what the hell? You say this to her friend?
Every line I keep hearing from these characters, it's like you go to one of those coffee house slam poetry nights. This is all these lines are from.
And she just looks at him and, like, with a disgusted look, like, shakes her head and goes, Andy. Like, this is just the normal thing for this guy. They sit down at a table, and then he asks her if she want a drink, and he apparently just steals one from a waitress's tray as she walks by. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I was like, you didn't order that, did you? But then the waitress walks away with it like it's no big deal, and the people at the table aren't complaining that they didn't get their drink.
He
So,
goes, hey, you want a drink? And then just reaches over to a nearby tray, hands it to her. Then Beth says she's worried about Andy. I tend to agree, because all he thinks about is sex, and he responds with, and this is where this movie gets even more head-scratching.
You know, sometimes I wished my mother would have dressed me up funny, so I could have grown up to be a homosexual.
like I said, portrait of the times.
And she asks why, and he says,
A homosexual. Why?
Just think of it. Then I wouldn't have to think about girls.
and
Because that's how that happens.
It's like, well, you might not be thinking about girls, but you just be replacing that with probably thinking about men. And her response to this, she just starts drinking that drink. She can't down it fast enough. So then Brea comes in and joins them. Andy steals another drink and offers it to Brea. And he does say something. He's like, hey, Brea, you want a drink? She's like, okay. And he just grabs it off the tray again, and he goes like...
It's seriously like, what is the policy of this bar, of this restaurant? Because I want to go there.
But he says it, he goes, I think it's a hurricane or something.
I think it's a roofacane.
And then Beth says to him, she goes, you know Brea has no vices. And Brea says that she's acquired a couple. And then Beth goes on to explain to Brea about how Andy was saying something about his rug fantasy, about her on a rug. But she stops it, and then she looks at him and she goes, oh, really? Were you talking about me like that, Andy? And he goes, trust me, I can't go on or I might lose a friend. Yeah. And I wrote, you will.
It's like this movie. It's at this point, it's like a runaway car with no one driving, and everyone in the car is drunk.
Yeah, and it's about to get weirder because the next line of the movie is Brea says, hey, I just have this orgy I just planned. Does everybody want to go?
Yeah.
I just wrote, where are we going? Cut to orgy. or apparently orgy party. This is not an orgy.
No.
But she says, I've set up a, quote, orgy. Would everybody like to come?
Well,
and I don't mean, oh, Jesus. Oh, boy.
Ooh, mommy.
Here comes the boys.
Here comes the boy.
So cut to the, quote, orgy party. It's a huge party with lots of people. Hot water bottles. Okay, did you notice this? Like, so we're panning through the party, and you see those hot water bottles.
Yeah.
And they're filled with wine.
Yeah.
And the quotes are, they have stuff written on them. Is one says white, one says red, and the other one says, like, homemade.
I don't know if that's some kind of homebrew there.
And I'm like, I wouldn't be sipping from that one.
No.
And then we see some guy, he's talking to Brea, and he's all drunk, and he's holding a skeleton. I thought at first that they were maybe at the school or something.
Yeah.
Because he's holding, like, what would be in a biology class? Like a skeleton, and then he tries to make out with it and falls on the ground. And then we see a shot of Andy, the Oriental rug man, sitting on a staircase with two girls, one in each arm, and he says, hey, do you girls want to play the doctor-nurse game? And they agree. Carla is playing a professor in chess, and they're sitting there. This professor is, like, real drunk.
Yeah.
And he's just, like, staring right at her chest, and he says, do you think that the Americans are really better than the Russians at chess? And she just gives him this look like, I know what you're looking at. And he's just like, oh, you caught me. So Heather is talking to the guy who hit on her at the bar.
Yeah.
And magically it worked. And also his friend Warren. And so she's talking to this guy, and Warren is, like, sucking on her fingers while the other guy tells her how he used to share a bunk with him. Okay. This part.
Yeah, it's just so weird because she's just, like, lying there like, like it's no big, like a cow getting milked.
Yeah. She's got her fingers being milked by Warren.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah, Warren's a real creep. I used to share a bunk with him. And she's like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah, one night. She goes, yeah, he used to whack off all the time.
Whack off.
He goes, apparently, one night in this cabin, the whole cabin started shaking because all the camping boys were whacking off at the same time.
So, 20. I heard the word 20. I wrote down 20 because that's the word she said.
And I just read again, huh.
Every night when the lights went out, Warren started beating his pud.
Beating his pud?
Yeah. One night he was so damn bad, the whole cabin started shaking. I counted 20 guys beating their pud.
Warren, you might have gone blind.
Really?
Like, how is this working? Why is she not running? And again, as we progress into this movie, Heather becomes a completely different character. I guess the orgy just really brings it out of her, I guess.
Or into her.
Whoa!
Whoa! Zing, zing, zing!
So we cut to Beth is hitting on some old guy and talking about how she wants to find someone she can talk to. That really goes nowhere. But I thought I'd mention it because it keeps cutting to that, and I thought maybe it would develop into something. No. So Brea walks into this bedroom. She opens the door, and you see Andy, the Grindbin All-Star, Ushi, and two other women all sitting on a bed naked, and he's just like...
This is... Now, I love... You always hear the expression, hey, let's play doctor. I guess this is how you play doctor.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But she looks at him and Brea says, you look as happy as a hypochondriac at a medical convention.
Yeah.
And he goes, Brea, why don't you come in? You could be the, quote, chief nurse. And she says, no, thank you. And then leaves. And you're right, Chris. He starts playing doctor. He's like, all right, who wants to take my temperature?
You know what would be great? It's okay. Because when I saw this, I thought it was a missed opportunity for a great gag. One of the girls should have pulled out a thermometer. But she's like completely naked when she does it. And he's like, hey, where'd you get that from?
That would have been great. And this is when I wrote, like, I'm thinking, like, is this movie a porno? Because it has all the signs of being pornography at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what I'm watching. We go to Heather in that room with Warren, the creep man, and the guy who hit on her at the bar. Warren is, like, rubbing her leg. So, okay, they're sitting on the couch, right?
Yeah.
And Warren's, like, on the ground, like, petting his face up against her leg and, like, rubbing it really, really creepily. And the other guy is saying stuff about how the three of them would be really happy together. And she's just all letting this happen.
Yeah, she's just lying there like kind of...
I'm like, did they roofie this woman? Did they Cosby her?
Today she come to the party, to the things, and the lane tucking on the fingers, and some roommates all around me.
You missed the part when he said, Heather, you got a headache, right? Yeah. So we go back to Beth. You can go ahead and tell this part. The guy with the skeleton guy.
Yeah, so he's like walking in, like he hits on this blonde girl, and he's like, "Hey, you're the woman of my dreams, you're the one for me." And
the man with the skeleton.
Yeah, he's holding his skeleton under his arms, and the woman's like, she's not having it. She's like, you know what? I think the girl over there, she's more your speed. And so, the old classic gag, we see this person from behind, long hair, and he's going over there, and I think slaps. He grabs the ass and turns around, and yo boy, it's a guy with long hair, and gives him the old 1-2 straight to the face, and a laugh is had at the expense of this poor man.
Yeah, he gets punched out, and everybody's like, oh boy. Who is this man, by the way? Is he like a professor or something?
I don't know.
So we go to Bria, and she's getting in an argument with some guy, and she says, I'm telling you, you are what you eat. And they get in some argument, and apparently it's going to be a contest. And here are the rules of this contest, Chris. Apparently, if she loses, she has to go to bed with him. And I'm like, I guess unconsensually. And if she wins, she gets to shave him bald. And I wrote, I'm not sure that's a fair deal.
What part of him is getting shaved bald? It's not really stipulated.
Yeah, exactly. You're right, actually. He wins, he gets to rape a woman. She wins, she gets to shave him. Huh. Bria and this guy Mickey are doing their sit-ups, and then Beth runs in, and she's just like, anybody taking bets? And then starts like being some bookie in the middle of this thing. Then we go to Heather, as she's in another room being mauled by Warren and the other guy on a floor on top of like a mountain lion rug with the face on it and everything, It's like a bearskin rug, but if it was like a lion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It'd be funny if they switched out the heads for each animal just to give it like a different, like it's the same like rug from Malibu High, and just put another like head on it.
This is something you just don't see anymore, is like animal skin rugs with the head on it. Can you imagine what it would be like if you're walking around in the dark and you trip over that thing? I mean, you could take a tooth through the foot, Maybe that's why they don't make them anymore. That and the fact that you pretty much probably couldn't have any more animal cruelty than that. We go to this sit-up contest, and Bria wins, and then she's like gonna shave his head, I guess. And then we go back. The last thing we see in the orgy party is Andy in that bedroom. He's got even more girls playing doctor with him. They just kind of like jump on him, and the scene ends, and he's having a ball. That's that.
Yeah, game over.
So, Chris, we don't know where we're going.
No.
At this point, however, we do know where we're going next, because
universal sign for things are happening?
Yep.
There's a plane landing.
A plane lands. We're at the airport. A girl gets into a cab. We then go to Heather's apartment. It's the next day. The doorbell's ringing. Heather wakes up. She goes to the front door and greets her cousin. Now, this is what's interesting, is when she walks in, this girl just comes over to Heather's place uninvited. And she says, and I guess I got this wrong, I thought she said, hey, Heather, don't you remember me? I'm your cousin, Polly. But I guess her name is Paula.
Yeah.
I wrote it down as Polly for the whole movie until the end, when I said, oh, I guess her name is Paula.
Don't you recognize me? I'm Polly, your cousin. Oh, honey, come in.
So she just took a plane, found out where her cousin lives, shows up at the front door and says, oh, hey, I'm here to visit you.
Like out of the blue, like the pop by.
She even says that part where she's like, oh, I haven't seen you in forever. It's about time we hang out, right? And Heather's just like, oh, yeah, I guess so. At this point, it's like, well, if she hasn't seen her in that many years, does she even know this is her cousin? Like, this could be any just drifter that showed up and knocked on her door. She invites over her cousin, right? She's like, all right, we'll come inside. And she's like, wow, you got quite the place. Yeah, she fucking does. They walk on the balcony, and Heather, like, you wouldn't even... There's no way you could live closer to the beach.
Unless you were in Beach Girls.
No, I think this is even better than Uncle Carl's place. Because they walk out, and it's like she lives in, like, a fucking lifeguard tower. Like, all you can see is sand below her.
Yeah.
And she's like, man, you got quite the place. And I'm like, what does Heather do? I thought she was a student.
Yeah. What fucking... Well, maybe she's fudging numbers on that student loan application. And gets some kind
I'm like, there is no way in hell that a student would be able to afford this apartment.
Yeah.
This is insane. We are talking like today's standards, and I'm not joking. We're talking $5 to $10 million piece of property, maybe more, right there on Malibu.
Yeah.
Just looking out on the beach. This is incredible. So then we go from here to Lake Arrowhead. They just leave and they're going to go up to their vacation. We see water skiing for a while, and then Heather and Paula arrive at Heather's cabin. And this is what I wrote. How do these girls have all this fucking money? What does Heather do? How old is she? And how does she have... And we're talking this cabin, by the way. You know, Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear.
Yeah.
You can get a place up there that's not going to cost you that much money. But this place, it's like a mansion.
This is, we're talking Scarface.
And I'm just like, who is this lady? I thought she was a student. We don't know any description of what she does for work, who she is as a person, other than just letting herself be molested by a man and his quote special friend. What is this? Even weirder, Chris. They walk up to the cabin, and some drifter, man drifter, is like sleeping on her front lawn. And she wakes him up, and he's like, "Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was hiking all night, and I needed a place to sleep." And Heather's like, "Well, can you leave, please?" And then he's like, "Well, you know, if you need any help, I'm a man, so, you know, like, I can do things that women can't, like, you know, chop wood."
It's like, just get the fuck off our property. Jesus Christ.
Like, okay, so this man is, like, literally a homeless man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he had no means of getting there. He's like, I'm a little short. Like, literally, that's his exact words.
Yeah.
Like,
because then Paula's like, "Oh, well, how come you're sleeping on the lawn?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, I don't really have anywhere to live." You know, when I said I was hiking, like, I was kind of just walking around all night, and, you know, this was just a place. I guess nobody was home.
This is where I left my rest of my head, you know, for the night.
And Paula is very, very interested in this man, and she's like, "Heather, I think we should keep him around, because, you know, we can't chop wood, and, you know, we need wood, right?" And Heather's just like, "Okay, I guess he can stay. You can stay in the barn, or like the guest house or some shit," because Heather lives on like a fucking 5-acre mansion in Lake Arrowhead as their just, quote, summer home or whatever this is. And I wrote, why? Look, I don't have anything wrong. I don't have any personal issues with the homeless or anything.
Yeah.
But if one's sleeping on my lawn, I'm not going to be like, well, yeah, I guess you could stay around and chop wood.
What if, you know, what's winter, and that's his kind of, you know, his what have you way of paying rent.
Well, maybe he could have offered that, but he didn't offer that.
He
He's just like, "Can I just stick around?"
Yeah,
for a
he
bit?
just like, I just want to hang out, like Scott Daniels and Beach Girls.
You know what? God damn you, Chris.
Well,
I had a fucking theory I was going to say later in this movie.
Really? Because this was my theory, too. Because I thought this guy was Scott Daniels.
I think it is Scott Daniels.
I think so, too.
Okay.
Same denim.
All right, if you haven't listened to our Beach Girls episode, do yourself a favor and listen to that episode, because there is a character in that movie who is a serial killer, and his name is Scott Daniels.
Yeah.
Chris is right. Same denim, same story, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think this is Scott Daniels' original skin.
I was going to say, yeah.
So when you were watching this movie, you thought Scott Daniels?
Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah.
I wrote it down in my notes.
Yeah, I got
this
it
is Scott Daniels.
Yeah.
That's so incredible. I'm so glad you got that. I thought I was going to bust that shit out later in the episode.
Oh, and surprise me, please. I saw that the second I saw him lying on that fucking ground in that fucking denim.
I wrote, "Where's the guitar case?"
He hasn't killed that guy yet. That guy doesn't happen for another 10 years, I don't think. That guy's still alive.
These are the first victims of Scott. So we cut to Carla, and she's sunbathing by the docks. And then that Nick guy shows up that she talked about, the, quote, Truman Capote, Steve McQueen mix. More Steve McQueen and way less Truman Capote. Unless he had some high-pitched voice I missed. I don't know. He comes up and they make out for a while, and he asks if she wants to go to the town. She says no. But the only reason I wrote down this is because in this scene, when he leaves, she just waves in the weirdest way. Is she just puts her hand straight up, and like an animatronic from Disneyland just goes with her hand, you know? So we go to Camp Wenatchee. Now, I looked up the word Wenatchee. It's not real because I thought, knowing this movie, it has some sort of innuendo or something. Not that I could tell. We see Bria, and she's walking around and surveying the camp. She goes up and introduces herself to some campers, some young campers, and we find out she's the new camp nurse. And I wrote, she's dressed a little too risque to be the camp nurse. Because Bria, like I said in the beginning, remember how I said she was running that mile with a shirt tied in the middle?
Yep.
The only shirts she ever wears are totally unbuttoned and just tied in the middle.
You know, Mike, that's the thing about a coach is they want to motivate you. You know, they want you to say, this is what you can have.
She dresses like Marianne from Gilligan's Island. Actually, now that I think about it, she dresses exactly like Marianne from Gilligan's Island. Every outfit she has. If that shirt can be tied, Bria's going to wear it.
If it can come off, she'll probably wear it too. But it won't stay on for long.
So she goes up to these young boys. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah. Boys to men.
She goes up to these young boys, and this is a part coming up where I had to pause the movie because I was almost crying with laughter. The one camper, and I don't know if you wrote this one down, the real eager beaver.
Yep.
I wrote the real Crispin Glover of this movie. And if you haven't listened to our My Tutor episode, if you want to hear about Crispin Glover's first role in a movie, he's a lot like this guy. So the real eager beaver says to her, you know, let's start this summer off right. He looks at her and he says, man, you're a real looker. The last nurse, she was a real dog.
Welcome to the campsite.
She just kind of laughs it off in this nervous way, like, oh, yeah, boys will be boys, I guess. And she basically says, like, okay, well, if you need your temperature taken, you know where to find me. And she walks off, and the camera kind of just follows her butt. And then the real Crispin Eager Beaver just proclaims, and this is the line where I had to just stop it from laughter, is he says, boy, she's built like a brick shit house.
Boy, is she built like a brick shit house.
Okay, the term brick shit house, in my understanding, is used for like
football players.
Yeah, when a guy's like buff.
Yeah.
You don't say that about a woman.
Like Mean Joe Green, brick shit house.
Infamously, my mom once said while we were watching a basketball game, like, we're all over for like a holiday, and she just says, boy, that LeBron James is built like a brick shit house. And my brother and I just started laughing, like we'd not heard that term very often, you know? I have never heard somebody describe a woman as, quote, being built like a brick shit house.
No. Unless she's like a bodyguard or I don't know.
So we see his friend standing behind him looking very nervous and kind of awkward, like, man, you just said that within earshot of her. You literally just screamed that, and I think the people across the lake heard it. And his friend's like really nervous, and then the eager beaver like runs over to him and he's like, yeah, you know, I'd do anything, I'd make it with her. And he's just like, oh yeah, what would you do? And he's like, I'd take her out to the woods and make passionate love to her. And he's just like, yeah. And this one I did right. This guy's the real Crispin or Bobby from the van.
Yeah.
I got some theories for later in this episode, Chris.
Oh boy.
So he says all these things like, yeah, I'd take her to the woods and do her. And his friend's like,
Said every boy at a campsite ever.
yeah, and he's like, yeah, sure you would. And he's like, you don't even know how many girls I've made it with. I've made it with a lot of them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. He reminds me a lot of Crispin's brother in My Tutor.
Who brags about doing it all the time, but probably like has never done it.
You really got to listen to the My Tutor episode if you want to hear the horniest two characters in movie history. Because Crispin's brother knows apparently every whore in town that you can pay $50 to give you any sort of sex act anywhere in town.
Specifically at a diner.
Oh, diners, whorehouses. He knows them all in L.A. Yeah. Billy's the person to talk to. So we go to water skiing. Nick, the guy Carla came with, is teaching some lady how to water ski, and then Beth's with them, and they're just water skiing, and Beth falls, and some creepy guys in this cigarette boat just pull up to her, like right next to her, which, by the way, is very dangerous if you've ever been water skiing. You don't want to pull a boat right up to a water skier.
No.
And the guy like looks out and he's like, hey, you need some help? Need some help? And she's like, no, I think I'm okay. And I thought like, oh, that was creepy. But no, Beth goes ashore and she asks Nick, she goes, hey, who is that cute guy in the boat? I'm like, wait, really? Do you mean the guy who almost ran you over and like was all, hey, yeah, want to come on my boat? Want to sit in my lap? Yeah, that guy? Yeah. Huh. So we go to a library and we see Carla, or what we think is Carla, because all we can see is the back of her.
Yeah.
As she reaches through these bookshelves looking for a book. And we see this overweight white man with glasses just kind of ogling her.
Just kind of, he's perving out in the library.
Oh, real bad. And you know, do you notice he's standing next to that card case and it's covering his whole body?
Yep.
I would have been interested to see if he turned around at some point and his pants were, pitching a tent or something. Like, I think he's hiding there for a reason.
I see him standing in front of the cart, and all of a sudden the cart starts moving forward by itself. Like you hear the wheels like.
Oh. And then a younger black man walks in and also gives her a stare. And then she turns around and sees this overweight white man and she goes, can I help you? And he says, you already have. And I just wrote, wow.
Yeah.
So then she goes over to a desk and I guess we find out that Carla's working as like a librarian for the summer or something. But the black guy who walked in, he comes over and he says, you sure turned that old man on. And she says, quote, the story of my life. I always turn on the poor ones, never the rich ones. And I just wrote again, huh.
Can I help you with something?
You sure turned that poor old man on.
That's the story of my life. Always turn on the poor ones, never the rich ones.
Is she the ones? I'm sorry. Is she the type that's like, don't fall for a 30,000-er?
Well, the type that Carla is like, I would say nymphomaniac.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple parts in this movie where she comes on to anybody.
Yeah. And
in almost like very aggressive, scary ways.
Yeah. Like at first you're like, all right. Then you're like, I gotta go.
The only man she doesn't come on to is that man who was staring at her. And maybe if he played his cards right, she would have.
Yeah.
He came on just a little too strong for Carla, which I don't think is possible for the most part. So this guy asks her for a book, and then he watches her bend over and get it. And I'm like, we're really setting this guy up to be a real class act, you know? He's now asked her to get a book, stare at her butt a little bit more, and then he says something about, well, he asks her, like, oh, are you here working for the summer or something? And she says, yeah, I'm just here for the summer. And he says he lives there year round. And that's when I didn't know what he did at first. And I'm like, there's not many people that live year round in Lake Arrowhead. Lake Arrowhead's population today is like, I believe, I looked it up before this, it's either 11,000 or 18,000, which is a pretty small town.
Yeah.
In 1973, I imagine it's much less, which will come into play later. So she tells him that she finds the So he starts talking like he wants a book. He's like, oh, what do you do? She's like, I'm a student. I study anthropology. And he's like, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. She's like, I find the study of man very stimulating. And he says, he bets she does.
It's like it's almost it's devolved into like a that's what she said kind of back and forth.
This is what I'm saying. Like half of this movie, the dialogue is like that of a porno.
Yeah. Without the actual porno happening.
Yeah, this is like
after it.
this is like a movie with just porno dialogue. It's the most bizarre. It's just, this is what you will not believe because I'm not gonna. Well, we did talk about it. It is like a slasher movie with pornography dialogue, but it is not a porno.
No.
There's only one sex scene in this whole movie.
Yeah, that was kind of the surprising thing about it too.
This movie sets itself up constantly like
to disappoint,
like a pornography.
Yeah.
Like you're watching pornography. It's like, oh well, I guess these characters are gonna go do it next to the card catalog or something.
Like I'm waiting for someone to say like, oh, some girl like, oh, I dropped the wrench. Can you give me that wrench? And he goes, oh, I'll give you a wrench. And you just like hear the sound of a zipper, and we like fade to some blinds drawing or something blowing in the wind.
But in this movie, he would say that line, and then we would cut to a different scene. So he tells her his name is Mike. Okay, he says to her, he goes, my name is Mike Lemon. And she says, you got to be shitting me. And I wrote, I'm not sure why. What's going on?
I don't know.
We haven't set up who this man is or anything. I'm like, huh?
I think that maybe they think they're doing us a favor by not having to add more exposition for another character. But really, it's kind of like, well, you're kind of just glazing over somebody now at this point. It's like...
Well, we'll find out who he is very soon.
Yeah.
So we go to Beth eating ice cream with some little sailor hat on. So she's wearing this hat like a 5-year-old would wear on a boat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like if you go for a family picture and they like dress the kid up in like a little sailor outfit and put this little round hat on his head.
Like the kid from the Pet Sematary movie.
Yeah. He does. She looks like that. So she's got her little sailor hat on, like kind of walking around licking this ice cream cone, and then some random guy comes up and hits on her, and I guess this is that creepy man from the boat who tried to run her over, and he says like, hey, my name's Lee, you want to go for a drink? Cut to a bar. Beth and Lee are getting a drink, and I just wrote, she looks crazy with this hat on. She's still wearing it, tilted to the side. Like a 5-year-old about to take a family photo, and she says, and I'm gonna read you some quotes here. Yeah, I know you like these.
Yes.
Lee, you aren't married, are you? Beth, no, I can't find the right man. Lee, well, I'm a man, and I find you very attractive. And I wrote, I guess that's all you need.
It's like they set up the woman in this movie to have little to no resistance to any and all one-liners and openers and come-ons.
Like I said,
yeah,
this is the dialogue
of a porno.
Of a porno,
yeah,
but in a real movie.
Yeah.
And in a horror movie.
Yeah.
In the next 10 minutes, this movie is going to become a horror movie. Yeah. It's like they would take, you know how you watch Friday 13th or something, and like there's all these innuendos and stuff bandied about, you know, and scenes and all that. It's like take that to the extreme, but then just throw in like light elements of horror movie.
Right.
It's not even the focus of the movie. No. It just so happens to happen.
It's almost a subplot.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost a subplot. It like kind of happens. Yeah. It's certainly not the focus or even kind of the focus of this movie.
It's like you're, at home vacuuming and you hear someone screaming across the street like, I wonder what that was. You just go back to vacuuming.
Or like you're flipping the news station, and you're like, man got murdered, and you just kind of switch before it ever happens.
And tonight's winning lotto numbers are.
Oh, so now it's nighttime, and then we see some lady is dancing on a rock with these two men. At first you think it's Carla, but it's not Carla, because she's doing the Carla moves. She's snapping her fingers and doing all the crazy dance.
That's crazy.
So she's hanging out with these like
it's
bikers.
The dance of love, Mike. She's doing the dance of love.
So she's hanging out with these bikers, right? And they're just drinking this bottle of whiskey, like staring at this dance that's going on. And she's something about like, oh, you guys got to take me back into town. And then the big biker guy apparently sells her, quote, sells her to the other guy for $1.50. And she says, he's like, she gets all mad and she's like, what are you talking about? I'm not your slave. And then he grabs her by the throat.
And this is the moment where the movie takes an acute turn.
I'm like, whoa.
Like, we're talking the kind of turn where your head slams against the window.
Like you're just driving and you've been T-boned all of a sudden. He grabs her by the throat and pulls her to the ground and says, she was good for a while, but now it's over.
Yeah.
And I just write, what the fuck is going on?
Again, it's like you accidentally hit the remote and you're on a completely different movie.
Yeah, and then he just like he takes like a sip of the alcohol, and then hands it to her, and she's like, well, I guess I'm with the $1.50 guy now. And then he walks off into the distance. Then we go to the hotel. I still don't know this man's name, but I'm just gonna call him a hotel manager. And this guy, oh boy, he is he's a real interesting character. real interesting character. So he's sitting there and his wife is just breaking his balls, like, and rightfully so, because she says, I'm sick of you just hanging out with, quote, those foxy younger ladies, and you don't do anything around here. You're a terrible husband. You're a terrible father. He is. And his son is listening from the hotel desk, and I wrote, whoa. They're having a family argument in the lobby of this hotel.
Yeah. Which I've seen before. Awkward
You've
as
seen
all
like
hell.
a family that owns a hotel having like a family dispute.
Yeah,
right in the middle
I mean,
of
they
a
were
hotel?
Italian, yeah.
God damn it, why don't you get off my back?
Why don't you start acting like a husband? Stop messing around with all those foxy ladies.
Why don't you?
Drop dead. That'd be nice for you, wouldn't it?
Hey, why don't we sell tickets to your fights? We'd make a fortune.
And his son's listening from the desk, and then he just interjects and says, maybe you guys should sell tickets to these fights. You could make a fortune. Oh, no, so they're like, oh, Arnold, get over it. And he like gets all pissed at his mom, and he's like, I told you my name's Arnie. It's Arnie. And then he runs away, and he says he's going to the dance. Now, I thought when he said he's going to the dance, like it was some dance for the camp or something.
Yeah.
What is this?
I thought it was going to be like a social or something.
What is adults going to the prom or something? Like there's like a fucking punch table and shit, and this band playing and no bar, by the way. I'm like, what is this? They're just at some quote dance. And so they're just all these people are dancing, and then the creep guy who sold that girl to another guy is just standing there staring at this girl dancing. Like she's just wearing this yellow crop top, just dancing, having a good time by herself, and he's standing, I would say, 3 feet away from her, just staring.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't done that at a dance?
Jesus. And then the guy from the library, Mike, who was hitting on Carla, comes up, and he hits on Carla and asks her if she wants to dance right in front of the guy, Nick, who she came with to the mountains. And he's like, well, I don't mind. That's fine. And then Mike asks Nick if he lives up there. And he says, yeah, I'm a ski instructor. And Mike says, quote, wow, that must be a great life. And I wrote, Lake Arrowhead is such a small town. And when we find out what this man does, he's the fucking chief of police. How would he have never known who this man is? Mm-hmm. There's only so many people that live in Lake Arrowhead, especially in one area.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about the population of Lake Arrowhead, you're talking about like where it gets into, country roads where there's not many people out there. If this man is in the city, the chief of police would probably know him.
Yeah.
Especially if they live there year round.
Yeah.
Because nobody lives there year round. Like, nobody lives there at certain times of the year. It's a vacation spot.
So everyone knows pretty much everybody. There's no way you're really...
Nobody lives in Lake Arrowhead during the winter.
No.
That's when people go up to Big Bear to go... Like, nobody's going to the lake. They go in the summer. So we go back to the creep guy. He's just staring at women while they dance. Okay, so then the song ends, right? And the creep guy just comes up. He like stands right behind that girl in the yellow top. And she turns around and she's like, oh, hello. And he's like, hey, you want to go for a ride on my bike, my motorcycle? And she's like, no, it's too dangerous and I hate motorcycles.
Here we go.
Should have been end of story.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Last thing we get in the dance is Nick, the guy that Beth and Carla came up to the lake with, goes up to Beth and he goes, where's Carla? And she's all, oh, she left. I don't know where she went. She said she'll be back later. And then Nick gets all pissed about it. We'll get back to that. Creep guy. So he follows the girl from the dance on his bike and he offers her another. So he pulls up to her. She's walking. He's like, hey, how about a ride? And she's like, no, just like the first time. No.
First you don't succeed.
She's all,
burn her the fuck down.
He's got the Bobby and DeVito school of picking up women for sure.
Yeah.
So she says, no, I live right down, like I'm just right down the street anyways. It doesn't matter. No, thank you. Please leave me alone. And then all of a sudden it cuts to that woman he sold running up to a chain link fence and grabbing it, and like horror movie music starts. And then we see the creep guy. He starts circling the woman with his bike because he's not going to give up. She runs and hides. And then he screams like stuff like, you want to play games? We'll play games, bitch. It's like, give it up, dude.
Yeah.
So she runs off into the woods while he's still like kind of chasing her. And then she finds Heather's house and she like runs up and bangs on the door. And Heather wakes up and comes to the door. And the drifter comes out of his barn. The drifter who I guess Heather's let stay in her barn permanently now. He's like standing there watching. And then Heather and Paula come to the door. And then the creep guy yells, come on, man. Daddy wants to see you.
Come on, man! Daddy wants to see you.
And then she gets inside and she's like, oh, yeah, some guy was chasing me and everything. And then the creep guy sees her in this window and he yells,
hey, baby, come on out. I'm not going to hurt you.
And I wrote, yeah, sure. It would have been great if she was like, okay, I trust you now. So Heather and Paula, they're like, oh, let us call the police. And she's like, no, it's cool. I'm just right up the road. And then she just walks out of the house again. And I wrote, the guy just literally just left.
Yeah.
Like 1 second ago. And she's like, oh, no, the coast is clear. I'm not gonna wait a few minutes or anything. Nobody's gonna follow me and murder me in these woods. Cut to her walking through the woods, but we see a shot, Chris, of the barn.
Yep.
And the drifter's not there anymore. And we see her walking through the woods, and then some knife-wielding person is following her, and then eventually just stabs her to death in the middle of the woods. Yes, again. This somewhat of a subplot has now just happened where this movie is also going to become a Friday the 13th. We're at Camp Crystal Lake, not Camp Arrowhead. The coroner is there now, and they're taking away this lady on the stretcher. They have not covered her up. They've just... By the way, it's daytime now, so I guess they let her sit in the woods all night, and nobody heard her screams of agony as she was being stabbed to death. Do you think Heather and Paula were just like, it just happens all the time. Go to bed. We'll check it out in the morning.
That seems to be the pattern in this film, though.
So it's the morning now, and we see the coroner taking her away. And for some reason, Heather and Paula are just watching this. And Paula's like, oh my God. And Heather's just not even looking away. She's almost fascinated by this. And Mike, the guy who likes Carla, we find is the chief of police in this scene, says she has over 100 stab wounds in her body. And I'm like, okay, so if he just sat there and stabbed her 100 times, nobody noticed this during the night? Like, everybody just went to bed and said, fuck it. Take care of it in the morning. Those screams don't carry over the lake, that's for damn sure. So we go to Carla and Nick. And so Nick's all pissed at her because she, like, went off with the chief of police last night.
Yeah.
And she gets in his face and she's like, look, I'm an independent woman and I can do whatever the hell I want. And I wrote, okay, that's fine. However, he did kind of invite you here to spend time with him, and then you just blew him off and ran off to go screw another guy. It's kind of odd. Like, he's offered you a place to stay for the summer, and you're just like, oh yeah, hey, thanks for that place. I did want to date you, but you know what? Fuck off.
Yeah.
So we go back to the lake. The drifter walks down to the beach, and he's getting undressed, and Heather's like sitting there, and she sees him, and she's like, oh, you always go skinny dipping when you go in the water? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, he doesn't have any clothes. I mean,
like, what's he gonna put on? Like his drifter swim trunks?
It's like asking a homeless man. It's like, you wear the same thing every day? Yeah. Look like I got a fucking dresser around here?
Oh, excuse me while I go into my homeless boudoir.
He just starts coming on to her all of a sudden. She's not interested, but
aren't you worried about being embarrassed? Like, who the fuck's he worried about embarrassing?
Fucking homeless man.
I know, like,
he was sleeping in your front yard.
Like, and she's just stripping him of any and all pride at this point.
But he grabs her.
Yeah.
Grabs her and pulls her close to him, and he says, you know what would be good for you is to lie right here and get your ass dirty. Wow. And I wrote, I wouldn't push your luck, buddy. She's giving you a barn to stay in. You might want to shut the fuck up and not try to sexually assault her. Just saying.
I think he's doubling down.
He's like, well, I'm staying in your house. I might as well stay inside you too.
Yeah. A bird in the hand is worth me in your bush.
And then the hotel manager is standing on top of the hill, and he just starts like honking his horn. And Heather looks at him and just pushes the drifter off and walks up to the house. Then we cut to Beth and the rich man, Lee.
Yeah.
And they're in his house drinking cocktails naked. And she looks at him and she goes, I think I'm falling in love. And I wrote, it's been like 10 hours. Then they have sex on the ground. But it's not really much of a sex scene. It just shows maybe like a second of it, and then it cuts. Because again, this movie has all the
trappings
of pornography, but it is not. Go to the camp. The Nervous Nelly is what I wrote. The rest of I don't know his name. I just wrote him as the Nervous Nelly.
Yeah.
The Nervous Camper. He's talking to his mom on the payphone.
Poor bastard.
And like the other campers are like sitting there going like, making fun of him. And it's like, I bet they talk to their moms too.
But they just don't do it in the presence of other campers though.
Well, it's like they don't have to listen. Also, he could have shut that phone booth.
Yeah, so I think in this situation, everyone's at fault.
Yeah, he's just standing with the door open, and he's like, no, Mom, I don't need any more clothes. Mom, please, Mom, I love you.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you loving Mommy and everything.
He's like, yeah?
He's like, yeah, I am a young teenage boy, probably in about 7th grade or so, which I can't wait to hit on why that's such an odd point in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the real eager beaver, he's over there making fun of him. And then Bria comes out and catches them, and she's like, hey, what's going on? And the Nervous Nelly, he runs off. She catches him. She runs down by the lake, and she's like, oh, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't like those kids. You know, he's supposed to be my friend. He's always making fun of me. And she says, well, why don't you just beat him up, stomp his head, and run him over with the tank?
Just kill him.
Yeah. And I wrote sage advice from the camp nurse.
Yeah.
And she tells him, mothers sometimes don't understand, but she does. And again, I write, Now we go to Heather and the motel manager. And they're in Heather's bed, apparently after a sex session. Another piece of porno that's thankfully happened off screen.
Oh, God, yeah.
And he says to her, and she's sitting there already really pissed, right?
Yeah.
And I think Heather's got a real problem because this fucking drifter's on her house, and this girl who showed up is apparently her cousin, but she doesn't know who the fuck this girl is. And now some guy's coming over, and she's like, oh, I guess I'll have sex with him. She's probably also wondering if she should go get test results after Warren and his friend molested her on that lion rug. But he says to her, and I'm not kidding, and this is a quote from the movie, you're as good as when you were 16.
Yep. And that was when I said, somewhere along the lines, she stopped going to therapy.
You're as good as you were when you were 16.
Marty, you're a son of a bitch.
I know. But it's always been that way between us, hasn't it? You need me. I need you. Whenever you've wanted a real man, I've always been there, right?
Now we know why she's so bipolar and has so many issues. She calls him a son of a bitch, rightfully so. Yeah. Then Paula walks into the bedroom while they're still in bed together and just stands there and smiles. Doesn't even say anything. Just stands there and she's like, hey. And then he gets out of the bed. Heather's really, really fucking pissed at him. Tells him to go to hell. He leaves. And on his way out, in the same room, proceeds to hit on her cousin, Paula. Yeah. And says,
Well, you are a pretty thing, aren't you?
That's what my daddy tells me.
Make sure you always listen to your daddy.
After we just heard about the you were sure just as good as when you were 16, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Heather has a line towards the end of this movie that is one of my favorite lines in movie history, though. I just can't wait to get to it. About this guy. And maybe she should talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, you probably would.
So Paula smiles, and Heather's all pissed. And I still wrote, what the fuck does Heather do? I'm still interested in that. So we go to Lee and Beth, the rich man and Beth. Because you're right. This movie, even though we've gotten off the whole philosophical conversations, it's still just random vignettes of couples that happen and these crazy things that happen between them. So she's asking Lee all these questions. Oh, I want to know some stuff about you. I mean, what do you do? I mean, who are you? Do you like football and everything? And I'm like, well, she's the one who just said she was in love with the guy 5 minutes ago. This is getting odd.
Yeah, usually you're past the, so what are your common interests, your favorite color, your top 5? That's like way gone. That's done. That was 18 dates ago.
But he like gets kind of all pissed about it. And he's like, my name's this. I was born here. I was I'm an architect and I like football. My favorite team is the Oakland Raiders, and that's that. Oh, and then he goes, and I get turned on by looking at beautiful blondes. And he tries to rip open her robe. And then she kind of like backs off and she goes, is that all you want from me? I don't even know you. And I wrote, you're the one who said you were, quote, in love with him 30 minutes ago. What?
I like to unwrap my woman like a candy bar in the sun.
The way he says it, too. And I like to look at blondes. And he tries to just...
Lee, I want to talk to you.
About what?
About things.
What things?
Things. Just things. Things like where you're from. Do you have any brothers and sisters? What do you do for a living? You know, do you like football? Just things.
Okay. I was born in St. John's Hospital in Denver, Colorado. My family moved to California when I was 6. I have 1 brother and 2 sisters, and I am an architect, and a very good one. And I love football. And my favorite team is the Oakland Raiders. And I get turned on looking at beautiful blondes.
Okay, so he's like, comes over and he's like, it's all right, baby. It's all right. Come on over here. You know, I was just kidding around, you know. We can talk about football later. And then he gets her robe off and he starts going to town. And we cut. This is what I wrote in my notes. What is this movie? Like, what am I watching exactly?
Just, right now, it's just things happening.
Like, is this a slasher movie? Or is that killer just never going to show up again?
This is just a series of planes landing repeatedly at this point.
Okay. This morning, Heather and Paula saw a dead girl getting in a coroner's wagon who died 10 feet from her house.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much on her property.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
All right. She's having sex with the hotel guy. Paula's walking in on it like, I like him too.
It's like, oh, that was gruesome. Time to fuck.
Yeah, it's like apparently nobody gives a fuck about the potential of a murderer going around Lake Arrowhead, which I can tell you, not many murders happening up there.
It's funny because it feels like this sets the formula, the standard for these types of movies, and they just the other movies just kind of took this and ran with it and elevated it to where it needed to be. But if this is the blueprint of all those films.
This movie came out before all of these movies. All of these movies.
Yeah, it's something to consider.
And the tonal shifts in this movie are so bizarre. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't help but love this movie because it's like, I've never seen such like a scatterbrained, just it's all over the place. It's schizophrenic is what it is.
Yes, very much.
This movie is all over the fucking place on what it wants to be.
Take different plot points, write them on different pieces of paper, throw them in a hat, dump them out, rearrange them, and then lose some of the pieces in the wind. And this is that movie.
It doesn't know what it wants to be. 1 second it's a porno, 1 second it's the original slasher movie, and then another second it's a
Ernest
movie
Goes to Camp.
Yeah, a movie we've covered in the past, The Teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all over the fucking place. It's so great.
Yeah.
This is one of the best.
Yeah, usually it would just be another abysmal failure that we would just give up on. Like, but this is it's so entertaining.
I hope we're giving this movie justice because it really is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And I'm not kidding. This is just so bizarre.
Yeah.
It must be seen to be believed. If I saw this in the theater and like it was only a showing and I couldn't show it to people, I'd be explaining this to people for years.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you got to see this movie. And people would be like, you're making it up.
Well, kind of like I didn't understand what Dangerous Men was even after you told me.
I'd spent years explaining Dangerous Men to people, and then finally it comes
10 years
out.
later, I finally saw it after I heard it
and
from
you're
you.
like, now I get it.
Yeah.
Another episode, by the way, Dangerous Men.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to this lake beach, and then like Arnold or Arnie from the hotel, the kid from the hotel, comes out and he creeps on all these girls in their bikinis on the beach, and he spots Paula, and he walks on over to her, and she smiles at him. But we immediately cut to the Drifter. And I got a lot of problems with this scene, so we'll talk about tonal shifts. We cut to the Drifter guy, Scott Daniels.
Yeah.
Holding a rifle, staring down the sights. And we see shots of like Heather walking on this path, and then we keep cutting between him and Heather, and he's like looking down the sights, and the music's starting to swell and everything.
It's like, and I, having seen these kinds of films, I was like, this is just a red herring. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if it's really gonna happen? Because this movie's so fucking all over the place. Like anything can happen.
When I saw this, I'm like, oh, he's not really aiming at her. He's like maybe aiming at like a rabbit or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it goes like, and then she walks in front of the gun.
Yeah.
And he pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And nothing comes out. And she's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And he goes, she says, are you crazy? And he says, and I quote, I could have killed you.
Are you crazy?
I could have killed you.
Where did you get that?
I could have killed you. At this point, you're like, all right, buddy, fuck you. I'm calling the cops. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Why is... hey, where'd you get the gun?
Well, she smartly says, where did you get that?
Yeah.
And he says...
In the house.
In the house, just like that. Well, who the hell gave you permission to go into my house?
Don't get so excited. It's no big deal.
You walked in and just took that, right? Well, who the hell do you think you are?
Heather.
You are to stay out of my house unless I ask you in. Do you understand that?
What the fuck are you doing going to my house and then bringing out a gun and then pointing it at me while walking to my fucking house and then pulling the trigger?
Yeah. And this
Real
is...
funny joke, guy.
And this is all to set up the red herring for the actual killer, because they want you to feel like... They want you to believe that this is this guy's motive. Like, oh, keep an eye on that guy, but that's the only reason I think this character exists.
This is insane.
Yeah.
So he says, don't get so excited. It's no big deal. Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
You pulled the trigger. Like, it's one thing to maybe be pointing at something else. No,
Yeah.
he was pointing at her. It's no big deal, said the man before the knife went through her back. So she tells him to stay the hell out unless she asks him in. He looks disappointed. I write, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And Heather, tell him to leave.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I still need that wood chopped, so... By the way, when you get around to that, go to the hotel. Arnold is working behind the desk, the young boy of the hotel managers. He's working behind the desk, and his mom's just like berating him about stuff about not working, even though he's in the middle of working. Mm-hmm. And she says to him, like, you're just like your father. You and him are the Don Juans of Arrowhead. And did you notice that this shot completely out of focus?
Part of
was
it.
like,
I thought it was
horribly
just,
out of
I thought it was
focus.
just the resolution was changing in the bandwidth, but I guess you're right.
No, it was like horribly out of focus.
Okay.
So she tells him to clean the place up. He like goes outside with a broom, and then he sees his dad putting his arm around Paula. And his mom walks out behind him at the door, and they both look out, and she says, "I told you he was no damn good." Cut to the woods. The mystery killer who stabbed the girl is walking through the woods carrying a rifle. And we see Beth and some girl water skiing. And basically it goes on for a while, but the killer shoots
the person. And it's funny because the blood effects they use in this,
it looks like
paint.
Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
The original Dawn of the Dead blood
yeah.
effects.
Yeah.
You want to know why those were the blood effects, though? And I'm almost positive. Is because back then when you were making a movie, they wanted you to make the blood look very fake. Or else, like, censors and people are going to have issues with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's the same reason why they had green blood in Evil Dead, too. That was going to get an X-ray.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Dawn of the Dead, one of the reasons that the blood looked the way it did was because of that.
Yeah.
Because Day of the Dead, the blood was, like, much more realistic.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Right. This is like a paintball.
Yeah, and there's no wound or anything. It's just like somebody just
got grazed.
They just shot a paintball at her face. So the coroner's there again, and now there's like a big crowd of people watching them pack up this body. And all the girls are there. Like the whole town's come out to see this dead body get carried off a boat.
Well, you know, small town, big news.
And that's when the Lone Ranger makes his appearance. And he asks Beth all these questions, but nobody knows much of anything. And there's that great shot where it zooms in on his face and he goes, "Well, whoever it was is a hell of a shot." Da, da, da. We go to the library. Arnold walks in and he talks to Carla and he says something about how he's looking for a book. And she's like, "Oh, well, what type of book are you looking for?" And he's like, "I'm looking for a book on sex." And Carla says, and I quote,
"Yes, I'm looking for a book on sex.
Sex?
I gotta make up a term paper for school, you know?"
You look like you could write your own book on that.
I'm like, again, is this a porno or?
It's like, I don't know. I thought the movie was gonna be called like the Doomy Decimal System.
The Doomy Decimal System.
Yeah.
She's like, "Well, what type of book on sex are you looking for? We got this, we got that, we got so and so." And he goes, "I'll take all of them." And she's like, "Oh, that's some report you're doing." Cut to Bria getting out of the shower. So she's like in her cabin and she's getting out of the shower and drying herself off. And boys will be boys. The real eager beaver and his friends are staring in the window. And the Crispin Glover of the group says, "Wow, would you look at those tits?" And they look over and the shy camper is like standing on a tree and he's just totally like ashamed of these guys. And the Crispin is like, "Hey, why don't you come on over here, man?" He's like, "No." He's like, "What are you, chicken or something?" He's like, "No, I'm maybe a little bit." And he goes, "What are you, queer?" And this kid fucking loses it.
Yeah.
The nervous Nelly just goes over to him and punches him right in the face. And he's like, "I'm not queer." Cut to the hotel. Paula, this is when I finally found out her name was Paula. So she comes in and she's looking for Arnie. And the mom's there. And the mom is all like pissed off at her. And she's like,
I have no idea where he is. Will you tell me something? What kind of a girl picks up a boy?
and then eventually Arnie comes in and they leave. And his mom looks away pissed and she goes, "Just like his father." So we go to the beach at night. We get that scene with like Paula and Arnie, and they're just sitting at the beach, and she's bored as all hell, and he's just like, "I like it down here." And she's like, "Why?" And he's like, "It's quiet. We can talk." And she's like, "All right, well, what are we going to talk about?" And he's like, "Oh."
It's like a switch is flipped in her brain at this point.
She's just like, "Are you going to do something? Or
Yeah.
what the hell are we doing down here?"
Yeah.
And so he says to her, he goes, "You know, Paula, you're a beautiful girl." And she goes, "Well, you're a nice boy." And he gets all upset. And he's like, "I'm not a boy. I brought a lot of girls here." And I'm like, real winner of a line guy. But for some reason, she's kind of turned on by this. And I write, "Of course." He comes on to her and he starts kissing her. And then I didn't really understand what happened. So like, he's like kissing her and then she like pushes him away. And she's like, "You don't even know how to kiss or something?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "A lot of boys don't know how." And she's like, "Yeah, they're called virgins." And then she starts like emasculating him. And she's like, "You're a virgin, a real life virgin." This is like the cheerleaders all over again. Like they're looking for that elusive virgin. So he like kind of storms off. He's like, "Stop it." And he runs off. And she still continues. She goes, "What's the matter, little boy? Didn't your mother ever tell you about the birds and the bees?"
And he just kind of runs off in the darkness.
Yeah,
like,
and it's like
crying,
she's
like,
just rubbing salt in that fucking wound.
yeah, like does she? Apparently, she's just not in the mood.
I have no idea what happened.
Like she gets off on She gets off on guys not getting off. There you go.
So we go to
she's Heather's, a blue baller,
professional blue baller. So we go to Heather's house. She and Paula are sleeping, and the killer sneaks into the house and goes up the stairs, and the killer tries to stab Paula in the bed, right? Mm-hmm. And then she like wakes up and she runs into the bathroom, and then Heather wakes up and runs into the room, and then the killer like chases her all outside into the woods. And Paula runs downstairs, picks up the phone, asks the operator to call the police. I guess 911 wasn't invented back then.
No.
And so like Heather's being chased, right? And then she just, for some reason, just goes like, oh, I guess that's over with, and like sits on a tree and is like, I'm just going to breathe here for a while. Killer like runs up and grabs her, and she pushes away, and then all of a sudden a cop car pulls up. I guess Heather just stops running, and she's like crying by a tree or something, and then the killer runs away. The cop runs up to Heather and he asks her if she got a good look at him, and then the drifter comes up and like walks into the scene. I wrote, why is he still here? After the whole gun incident, I thought maybe he wouldn't be invited around anymore.
I found a bullet.
And she screams to the cop, it was a woman. Da, da, da. We go to this road. The nervous Nellie camper is walking along, and Bria pulls up in her car, and she asks where he's going, and he's like, oh, I'm going to town. She's like, oh, why don't you take a ride with me? I'm going in there too. It's my day off. And I wrote, if she's the day off, who's going to be the camp nurse? So if a kid gets hurt, they're just fucked at this point?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, that kid broke his leg. Well, what are we going to do? The nurse is off.
There's
you wait till
Advil.
tomorrow?
Yeah.
Take some Advil and call us in the morning.
Yeah.
Can you come back tomorrow, please?
Just elevated, take an Advil. We'll be here.
Okay. This movie's about to take another real deep, dark turn here. Mm-hmm. We go to a restaurant with the rich man Lee and Beth. She's like making plans. She's like, oh, there's going to be this great party at this country club later. Are you going to come with me? All my friends are going to be there. I can't wait for you to meet them. And he gets all upset about it. And he just looks at her and he goes, just because we made love doesn't mean we need to start buying furniture.
So where do you meet Carla?
You've got it all figured out, haven't you?
What are you talking about?
Sweetheart, just because we made love, it doesn't mean we have to pick out furniture.
And then he says, look, I'll call you sometime. We'll have some drinks and, a little ba-ba-ba. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. And she's getting all upset by this. I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah.
And she's like, I believed all these things you said to me and everything. And
That's
he goes,
pillow talk, baby.
He goes, come on, Beth. You're a big girl now. We made it together, and that's it.
Well, it seems our relationship has come to a bloody end. Tell me, Mr. Kingman, how was I?
Oh, come on, Beth. You're a big girl now. We made it together, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a real dummy. I believe the things that you told me.
And then he goes on one of the most pathetic rants I've ever heard in my life. Absolute fucking asshole. It ends with, let me give you some advice. Next time you wake up in some guy's bed, don't nail him to the cross. It never works. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, let me give you some advice. The next time you wake up in some guy's bed, don't nail him to the cross. It never works.
I have never in my life, in a movie or in real life, heard a man demean a woman so terribly, and in public, mind you. They're at a table within earshot of other patrons. Yeah. Could you imagine if you were in a diner and you heard some guy talking to a lady like this?
I might have to get up and say something.
Chris, let me go through that again. Next time you wake up in some guy's bed, don't nail him to the cross. Like, this guy's some fucking Jesus Christ martyr in this whole thing. Like, oh, boys, you're pulling out the fucking nails and hammer on me, I'll tell you what. Look, did I come up to you yesterday with 3 nails and some wood and say, put me up for the night? Is that what I fucking said? Jesus Christ.
Is this a headache or a crown of thorns? Jesus.
Look, I just needed a place to rest my dick for the night. You know what I'm saying? Come on, you're a girl. Come on, you're a grown woman. You know how it works. Bing, bang, boom, you're done. fuck you, dude.
Oh,
like,
God.
Jesus Christ,
Like
this
the
guy.
ultimate slut shame in this entire film.
In a fucking restaurant.
Yeah.
It would have been so amazing if the waitress came up and she's like, "Are you ready to order?" Or
I'll come back.
So many times in my life where I'm having a conversation and the waiter comes up in the middle of it and you got to stop and everything. Yeah. That's what this scene needed. It really needed that. So she gets all pissed and she's like, all right, well, fuck you, guy. Like, Jesus Christ, I've never been so humiliated in all my life. Just to rub some salt in her wound is like, well, hey, can I drop you off someplace or what do you want to do here? And she's just like, I think you already have. And he goes, all right, take care. I'll call you. We will get those drinks. That's how he says it to her. He goes, take care. I'll call you. We will get those drinks. I will be in you again.
Yeah, well, I'll call you. We'll have those drinks. Now you take care, huh? It's been fun.
And then he just like kind of pats her head and leaves. I mean, wow. I paused that scene multiple times from laughter, just like, I know this isn't funny, but holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, this is just...
The fact that it's meant to be taken seriously in this film is just, it's nothing short of hilarious, I must say.
I mean... The thing is, like, do you think they were writing this like, oh, yeah, these fucking broads, I'll tell you, every time you rest in one for the night, they're going to put you up on the fucking cross. Am I right, guys? Am I right?
You've been paid for life.
Or is it supposed to be that this guy's an asshole?
With this movie, you don't know.
I have no clue.
You'll never know.
I'd like to believe that he's supposed to be the bad guy in all this.
Yeah.
However, that's a wrap on Lee. We'll never see him again. All right, so we go to Carla at the library, right? Mm-hmm. Now she picks up a ringing phone and she answers it and she goes, oh, hi, Heather. And she's like giggling. She's like, yeah, oh, what are you doing? And I wrote, wasn't Heather almost murdered?
Yeah.
Why is she on such high spirits at this point? Like, what excuse me? She was crying by a tree because some guy almost knifed her, or some woman almost knifed her in the middle of the night. And she's just now calling up Carla at the library and like, hey, Carla, how you doing, slut?
Hey, I just had a life-changing event. I have a whole new perspective.
Carla, are you still telling everybody about sex books down there at the library? So they make plans to meet at the country club. And then Mike the cop comes in. And boy, he's a real great guy. He opens with, quote, I thought I would stop in and tell you how much I love your body. And I wrote, Jesus Christ. Another martyr here. He died for all our sins, Chris. He let that girl in his house. He gave her some champagne. He died for our fucking sins, Nail him up to the cross. Put on those crown of fucking thorns. Call him Jesus.
I'm lighting the candle now. Saying a prayer.
He's going to rise again in 3 days. They will get those fucking drinks. Yeah. He will be risen. Pat her on the head and tell her good night. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm still not done with that.
Somebody move the boulder. Elvis has left the building.
Yeah, here we got Mike the cop, his fucking disciple over here. And the hotel manager. Yeah, the fucking the three martyrs of this town.
Spreading the gospel.
Yeah, Lee's off to write his fucking book.
Getting revelations pretty soon.
Oh, Jesus. He's gonna start his own religion. I'll tell you, these fucking broads, they want everything, You sleep with them one night, all of a sudden they're wanting you fucking, if you liked football or not. I mean, what the fuck she want to know, Jesus Christ.
And then she said unto me, I thought I loved you.
The first
then
thing
I said
know,
unto her, shut the fuck up.
I come up to her while she's fucking licking ice cream. Next thing I know, she wants to put a fucking diamond on her finger, Jesus Christ. I'm not even hard yet.
It's like, is the missionary Andrew Dice Clay now?
Yeah, this guy is like the original Dice Clay. That's for fucking sure,
Yeah.
Hickory dickory dock.
Amen.
Put me on the cross. All right, so Mike comes in. He says his one-liners about her body. she says something about going to this party. He's like, hey, why don't you come over to my place? We'll do a little you know. You can nail me up for the night. I got 3 nails and some boards. So she invites him to the party. He agrees. They're kissing on each other. And I write, isn't there a killer on the loose? Mm-hmm. Mike, you're the chief of police. Why don't you go out there and do a little police work, huh? Instead of going to the library telling this girl about how much you want to take her back to your place.
Now he's got to probe the scene.
Yeah, probe, all right.
Yep.
He's got to go pitch some tents. That would be great if he walked to the library at one point and he's like, you got any books on pitching tents? And he goes, whoop, don't need one.
Here's the hammer, you're the spike.
So we go to Heather's house. The drifter is just cutting wood outside without a shirt on. Arnie comes up and he asks where Paula is, and he goes, oh, she's by the water. Drifter walks off with this pile of wood, and he leaves a small hatchet in the stump. Arnie walks down to the water, and he's carrying said hatchet, just swinging it along. And then he goes into the woods, and he spots Paula down by the water with his dad, the hotel owner, the other disciple of Lee, one of the many martyrs in this town. And then Heather walks down to see the same thing. Arnie is watching this, and I like that part where he sits down and he just starts chipping away at this log with the hatchet.
And he keeps going. They should have. It'd be great if they panned back and it was this ornate sculpture of a rabbit.
Yeah, because he's chipping away.
It's like a swan or something.
So we go to Heather's house. Inside the house, the phone rings and Bria comes out to answer the phone. And she's kind of getting dressed. She's getting her bikini on. It's Beth, and she's at the bar, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote down this quote. I like this. Bria, is Carla there? Well, when you see her, tell her that Nick and I are here getting bombed, and we're going to drink margaritas until the bartender raises the Mexican flag. Then she just kind of drunkenly hangs up and starts making out with Nick. Mm. The other martyr in this town, I'm sure. A town full of fucking martyrs. So then Bria comes downstairs and she's still trying to put her top on. And then the nervous Nellie Camper is down there. And she goes, oh, can you put my bikini top on for me? And he goes, yeah, sure. And so he's tying it.
I've only done this before with my sister, but you're a little bigger than her. Well, I mean, don't mean it that way.
Yeah. Oh my God, man.
That'd be funny. He's like, what's that? I feel something behind me. Oh, that's my hand. No, I feel both hands on my shoulders.
Oh, that's my other leg. Yeah. But she says, okay, and I quote Chris, he says, I guess I'm nervous. I do this for my sister all the time, but she's not as big as you. I mean, you're beautiful. She turns around and she says, Harold, what if we didn't go back to camp tonight? After we go swimming, we can have dinner and watch TV. And would you like that? And he says, son of a gun, who wouldn't? And I wrote, whoa, 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 Deborah LaFay. This is a fucking kid. She's a college student. Mm-hmm. And I wrote, how old is this kid? He's in a summer camp talking to his mother on the phone.
I mean, he's got to be young. I mean, he's got a fucking bowl cut, for fuck's sake. No one under the age of 15 has a bowl cut. I'm sorry.
Bria found this kid and is like, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So we know maybe that's the reason why Bria's not hitting on any of the college guys or taking any of their advances, because Bria is a fucking child molester.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get back to that. We cut to Heather just drinking away, day drinking a cup of scotch in her living room, watching the drifter put piles of wood in the corner. And she just starts bossing him around. She's like, hey, don't do that so rough, huh? I didn't like how you did it the last time. And then he just kind of gets fed up with it and pours himself a drink. And she goes, what are you doing? You know, you take a lot for granted. You were told never to come in this house unless you were asked. Now get out! And I wrote, okay, stop. Heather, granted, this guy is a homeless man and some weird drifter, but Scott Daniels is not your personal slave, okay? You can't just pick up a man and be like, oh, great, a slave. You can't just treat this guy like shit. This is insane.
He's just another martyr in the making, Mike. Another martyr in the making.
So she's just like gets in his face on the couch while he's trying to finish his cup of scotch and just screaming at him. He can't take it anymore. He gets up and he throws her forcefully onto the couch, and he stands up over her and he says, just shut up. You move out of that spot, I'm going to bust your tail. And that's what I wrote. I just figured this out. This is definitely Scott Daniels from Beach Girls.
Yep.
We've finally seen his inner self. Mm-hmm. This is his original skin before he murdered that man with the guitar and took his case and wore his skin to go meet up with some girls on their summer vacation and start again.
Yep.
So he goes on a rant about how love and pain and having things. I wrote this is exactly Scott Daniels.
Yeah, this is a Scott Daniels song.
If you watch Beach Girls, he says the same things to that girl in Beach Girls on the beach. He's like, "You're like a computer, you know."
I was gonna say computer.
So basically, he says something so powerful that he puts Heather into some sort of stupor, and she suddenly becomes the woman she was in the beginning of this movie, where she let Warren and that other man rape her in a room, and she says like, "Oh my God, I'm not a bitch. I just want to be this other person, and thank you for letting me know that." And then they hug, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Just like Beach Girls.
Yeah. Cut to the bedroom. The shy camper is laying in bed, pretending to be asleep, and hoping that maybe this night will end, because he's very afraid about the predator that has taken him into her clutches, and he's not really sure what's going to happen. But Bria enters the room in her nightie. She sits next to him on the bed, and she goes, "Have you had a nice day?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, it was one of the best of my life." And he says to her, Chris, "I was just thinking, if Aaron and those creeps could see me now." And she says, "Are you going to tell them?" It's like, "Do I need to hide the body?"
Yeah.
And he says, "No way. Let them think what they want. Besides, nothing happened." And she says, "No, it didn't." Then he like pets her hair and says she's pretty and beautiful, and they kiss. And he says he'll never forget her. And she says they won't forget each other. And I wrote, "I'm sure they won't." Mm-hmm. He then goes on to say he's never made love with a woman before. And she says, and I quote, "You are now, Harold." And that's what I wrote. So I guess the reason she didn't sleep with anyone else is because she's a fucking child molester.
Yeah. She gets her jealous with boys who like lollies.
I don't think the camp's going to be too happy.
I don't think the camp's going to be around.
I'm sorry, you did what?
I made him a man.
Oh, yeah, Harold didn't come back last night. Bria, do you know anything about that? Some people said that they saw you with him by the lake. Oh, yes, Harold and I shared a very wonderful night. We fucked together and everything. You did what?
I mean, watch TV. Did I say fuck? I meant watch TV.
I made him a man. He's a martyr in the making. Mm-hmm. What if the next scene was Harold being like, "Look, Bria, I like you too, but come on, you're a grown woman. We just made it. I mean, what do you want from me? Stop nailing me to the fucking cross, you know? What do you want me to put on this crown of thorns?"
My back feels kind of heavy. Oh, it's a fucking cross I'm bearing here.
Oh, is this what it's going to be like? Oh, your bras are the same, huh? You know, you stick it in once. A lifetime of regret.
3 days in hell. I'll be back in 3 days, everybody.
I'll call you when we will get those drinks. I will rise again. So we go to basically the last scene of this movie, a swanky party, okay, at the country club. I looked it up, by the way. There is a country club at Lake Arrowhead, so it does exist.
Oh, might be in field trip. Live from the Lake Arrowhead Country Club, Grindbin special.
And I've noticed this. Okay, I've noticed there's only 6 minutes of this movie left. Where are we headed?
Yeah.
It seems that like
usually a crowd film
subplot of the serial killer has been completely lost. You're right. Usually in a crowd film, the last 20 minutes. In this movie, it's the last 6.
This is like, the last 0.00 seconds of making that free throw before the game ends.
Yeah, this movie's like, oh, fuck, we're down by 6. 5 seconds left. Better huck some 3-pointers up.
Yeah. And who's got the ball? Shaq.
But by the way, this scene is amazing. There's so many amazing things that are going to happen in the next 6 minutes of this movie. All the characters from the whole movie are now in this scene, except for Warren and that creepy guy and Lee the rich man. We'll never see them again.
Yeah, it's like the reprise of the opening song from a musical. It's like, here we go again, and the whole cast.
Everybody take a bow. So, and I wrote, apparently there's a killer on the loose, but nobody cares. Mike goes up and he asks Carla to join him for 6 months out of the year. She just kind of laughs about that. Heather walks up and she walks past the motel guy and Paula, who are now a couple, I guess.
Yeah.
Here we get some amazing dialogue as Paula says to him, this dialogue, Chris, wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, wow, wow. Paula says,
Heather told me to stay away from you. She said you were no good.
Well, maybe she's jealous. I've known Heather since she was a little girl. Grew up around here. Her father was an old friend of mine.
Doesn't having a relationship like that bother you?
What bother? What could be more fun than making love to beautiful young girls? Heather's never complained to me yet. I guess most young girls have a father complex. They like making it with an older man.
And I just wrote, wow. Wow, wow, wow. This guy, man. Not one, but 2 child molestation subplots in this movie. More subplot than the actual killing part of this movie. No wonder that family is so fucked up. He goes on to say things about how young girls all have a father complex while he continues to hit on Paula.
Right.
Jesus, man. This... Whew. Then we see the killer walking along the golf course.
Ah, boy.
Cut back to the party. Paula asks him about his wife. And he says if what he said before wasn't bad enough, he looks at her and he says,
What about your wife? Does she know about all your bad habits?
Sylvia does put up with a lot. She needs me. I guess when a woman gets to be her age, she grows insecure. Not much to offer anymore.
Do you think the writers are like, this is like some male scorn trying to dig into women? Is the culmination of the script?
It's either this is totally ironic or wow.
I think it's at this point it's like wow.
I wrote, this fucking guy, all these fucking guys, every man who lives in Lake Arrowhead is a piece of shit trash.
Yeah.
Like, this is...
The person who wrote that, I visualize as a guy in a fedora, a trench coat, a lot of facial hair, and...
Yeah, you know what? The man who wrote this is Lee. The guy who left her at the restaurant.
Yeah.
He went and immediately started writing this movie. He's like, oh, I'll tell you, I got a story for you. I got a fucking story.
My lady.
Like, you see him in the aisles after the premiere. He's like, am I right, boys? Am I right?
Women.
So while this is going on, this is my favorite line of the whole movie that's coming up, which a movie of amazing lines. How could we top any of them? Is we cut to Heather from across the party staring daggers at this man. Mm-hmm. And she's standing near her friend Beth, and she says to her, what type of jail sentence do you think you can get for contributing to the delinquency of a minor? And I wrote, maybe you should ask Mike, the cop, who's also at this party.
Yeah.
And Beth says, as if it couldn't get any worse, Beth says, well, all I can tell you is that I think your cousin is going to go home a little older and a little wiser.
Mm-hmm.
And Heather says, just as long as she doesn't go home a little pregnant.
I wish right there, like, they should have just freeze framed on everyone going, oh!
Okay, so now, because the movie's like, oh, fuck, we got to shuck up that last 3-pointer. The clock's about to to run out.
Yeah.
Let's just not even really have a reveal. Oh, yeah, the killer's Arnie.
Yeah.
Let's just show his face, and he's wearing a wig and a dress. They're almost like, you guessed it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude, I guess the twist, like, the second I saw him running from behind earlier in the film, like, that's a man running. That's a man running. That's a man's shoulders.
I was like, well, it couldn't be the Drifter.
No.
It's obviously not a woman.
Yeah.
It's Arnie.
It's painfully obvious.
So we learn the killer's Arnie. He's a wig on and a dress, but there's this great montage VO of his mother as like berating him, you know, like, you're a terrible son and your father's a scumbag. Well, he basically fires this rifle into the party, like public shooting. Just like he brings a fucking rifle to a swanky dance party and just starts firing at these people, picking off guests one by one. The cop, Mike, is shot in the shoulder. He runs to his cop car, gets a gun. Arnold's stopping to reload. Mike chases after him, shoots him dead, finds out it's Arnold, and is like shocked because at one point earlier in the movie, Arnold walked past him and he goes, "Oh, hey, Arnie," like he knew him or something to set up like a little bit of impact. Then we get over Arnie's dead face, voiceover from his mother.
You're going to be just like your father, Arnold. Play around with all the young girls. Who cares about me? Arnold, don't you love your mother? Oh, I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead.
I wish you were dead. I wish you were dead. We go from that dramatic beat to the town. Carla just gives a sum up of the whole summer in a jovial tone, is just like, so we learned a lot this summer, huh, girls?
Little adventure, some throws.
Yeah, and I wrote, apparently nobody's shaken up by this event at all. They were just part of a mass shooting.
Yeah.
People died in front of them. Like, dozens of people were killed. They were almost shot themselves at that party, but they're like, fuck it.
Well, dodged a bullet there, didn't we?
Just another summer at Lake Arrowhead. So Paula says, this is a summer she will never forget. And I wrote, I'm sure you fucking won't. You almost had sex with a serial killer and you slept with an old hotel manager.
Yeah.
You'll never forget it. You'll never forget it. Also, who fucking invited you, Paula? She was not invited to any of this.
You fucking downer.
Then Bria almost confesses to Carla about her crime. Because she goes something like, well, I'll tell you, Carla, I had a good time over at the summer camp, and let me tell you, if I told you the whole story, you might be calling your new boyfriend, because, oh boy. Let me just tell you, Carla, boys will be boys. Young boys will be boys. You know, they don't need to go through puberty to get up there, you know what I'm saying? Yep. Then Beth and Heather get in the car. The girls drive off. The theme music starts again. Mike waves goodbye. The end comes on the screen. And I write, what the fuck did I just watch? Recommendation?
Unwavering.
1,000%.
This is a mindfuck within a mindfuck.
This is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. Yeah. I hope that this podcast was entertaining. We really can't do this movie justice. Absolutely insane. We've been saying how we want to keep the episodes shorter. I know this one went a little long, but this movie absolutely deserves it. What a fucking find.
Yeah, it's like a rabbit hole into a wormhole back into a portal.
So let's talk about how this movie was made in 1973.
Okay.
Sleepaway Camp, which this movie basically fucking robbed half of its story from. And if you've never seen Sleepaway Camp, we won't ruin it for you, but the ending of this movie is a lot like what happens at the end of that movie.
Yeah, very derivative.
1983 for Sleepaway Camp. It seems to me that this movie was copied by quite a few movies after it, either intentionally or unintentionally.
I mean, dude, it's totally intentional.
This is like the original formula for a horror movie.
Yeah.
But it didn't know whether or not it wanted to be a porno or a horror movie. This movie, it was like, it's like a seesaw. It could teeter on one end or the other, depending on whatever second it feels like doing. Like, it's just one of the most bizarre tonal shifts I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, it's like each tone was supposed to be a primer for the next, but the charge just never really went off.
And I would just say this is just a movie that I can see that I think a lot of people had probably watched at some point and taken inspiration from. I know it had been lost for a long time and they brought it back, but cult film fans are aware of it, and if you haven't watched this movie, definitely go watch it. But it's so interesting how other movies later on are very, very, very similar to this movie.
Yes. Yeah, this set the blueprint, I believe, in my opinion, for a generation of filmmaking.
It really could have.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an exaggeration.
No, not at all.
You hear that sound?
Oh, I do.
Well, I got my theory.
Oh, yeah?
And if you haven't listened to this show before, Chris and I always go back to our first episode we ever covered on this show, The Van, 1977's The Van, starring Stuart Goetz and Danny DeVito, about a ginger boy who gets a van and tries to lure women inside of it and see what he can get away with before they decide to pick up that phone and dial 911.
Yeah.
Chris, how would Bobby and DeVito fit into the world of The Roommates?
You see, I see them like sprinkled around different scenarios, just but kind of like in the wrong place at the wrong time. Not exactly. I just in the library we alluded to earlier. Like they'll be kind of spying on her, trying to get closer. Like Bobby, there she is. Don't draw any attention to yourself. And you can kind of see the tops of their heads. You can see this big old orange fluff of hair, and they're kind of behind the library. And when she walks by, in the lower section of the shelves, a book kind of pokes out by itself where their waistline is, and lands on the ground. And she turns on and goes, "That's strange." And like, Bobby, put it back in your pants. He goes, "Oh God, all right." Does that. That's just that scene. That's like your teaser of like, what are these two guys doing here? And then the next one is the water skiing. Is when the skiing's getting all fucking crazy, you cut back, and for some reason her skis are now attached to the straight arrow, and the straight arrow is driving on the water, dragging her around.
Okay, you know that real eager beaver?
Yeah.
1973?
Yeah.
Well, the van took place in 1977.
Yes, it did.
That kid is Bobby.
Oh.
My theory is that Bobby was that eager beaver from camp. Looking in the window, looking at her undressing, going like, I've been with tons of girls. That's him.
Oh. All right. I'll take it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of The Grindbin. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at grindbin@gmail.com. You can find us on grindhousefilm.com. And you can also find us at Twitter, at GrindPod. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram. Reach out. Talk to us.
And don't forget to hit that big rectangular purple button in iTunes that says subscribe.
And if you enjoy the show, please rate and review us.
Bobby, start the boat!
Hey, Bobby, I got the money!
Yeah, I made the team! But you're a hooker.
Get that goddamn thing out of your mouth.
This bookie ain't got no real coach.
Hello, pizza man.
We're gonna play a little game, baby.
I just love fun and games. Get a little girl a little hot and horny.
This is Los Angeles.
You could have looked decent once in a while. And maybe Daddy would have had to kill himself because he couldn't get it up anymore.
What a shame.
Come on, just step on the gas before we get creepy.
And